I am Tobias Lockwood, 35 years old, a bank employee in Phoenix. That night I jolted awake as if an invisible hand had just choked my throat. Sweat poured out, soaking me. My t-shirt clung tightly to my chest and back. I had just dreamed of my grandfather, who passed away 2 years ago. His voice was low, hoarse, filled with authority as he warned me, "Don't drive on the highway, Tobias. Don't." He spoke urgently, almost losing control, his old eyes wide with terror. I could clearly see every wrinkle on his forehead, the way he reached out as if trying to pull me away from an invisible abyss. Then everything went black, and I woke up with a start. My wife, Valentina, was lying beside me and stirred awake. The nightlight cast a glow on her face, so beautiful that sometimes I still wondered if I deserved her. She opened her eyes slightly, her voice drowsy. "What's wrong, honey? Another nightmare?" I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. "It's nothing. Just a weird dream." I lied, and even I could hear the tremor in my voice. Valentina propped herself up on one elbow, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, and placed her cool hand on my forehead. "You're burning up. Are you sure you're okay?" I nodded, gently pulling her hand down and holding it lightly as if to prove I was fine. But in my mind, my grandfather's image still lingered. I didn't tell her. I didn't dare. It would sound insane. My grandfather dead for 2 years, appearing in a dream to warn me not to take the highway. Who would believe that? I just whispered, "Go back to sleep, babe. I have to wake up early tomorrow." She looked at me for a few more seconds, her gaze seeming to pierce through me before lying back down and turning away. I lay still, eyes wide open in the darkness, listening to the clock ticking like it was counting down to something terrible. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head. Valentina was already downstairs in the kitchen. Normally, she wouldn't drag herself out of bed until 7:30, but today, at just before 6, she was standing by the kitchen counter holding a coffee mug but staring blankly out the window. I came downstairs, deliberately making noise so she'd know I was there. She flinched, nearly dropping the mug. "God, you scared me." She laughed, but the smile was so forced that even I could tell. "You're up early." "Yeah, I couldn't sleep." I walked to the fridge to get water. Every little sound from the garage, the wind, the rustling leaves, made Valentina's shoulders tense. She was on edge. Extremely on edge. But why? I put on my jacket and grabbed my car keys. As I opened the garage door, my steps froze in front of my shiny black Audi. Normally, I'd just glance at it and get in, but today, I don't know why, but I stood there, paralyzed, the keys digging painfully into my palm. Valentina appeared at the door, trying to sound casual. "What's wrong? You're going to be late for work." "Nothing," I answered curtly, but my feet wouldn't move. She stepped out, her high heels clicking on the concrete floor. I clearly saw her gripping the edge of her coat so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Are you really okay?" she asked again, this time in a quieter voice, as if afraid someone might hear. I looked straight into her eyes. Those big round brown eyes today couldn't hold my gaze for more than 3 seconds. "I'm fine," I said, then opened the car door. But the moment my hand touched the steering wheel, a chill ran down my spine. My grandfather's image flashed again, those pleading eyes, that raspy voice. "Don't drive." I slammed the door shut. "Changed my mind," I said, my voice strangely calm. "I'm taking the car in for maintenance today." Valentina stood there, her mouth slightly open as if she wanted to say something, then stopped. She looked at me, then at the car, then at her watch. "Well, I'll head to work first then." She hurriedly kissed my cheek, a quick, cold kiss, then almost ran to her BMW. The engine roared and she sped off so fast that the tires screeched against the pavement. I stood alone in the garage, watching the trail of exhaust fade away. A heavy sense of dread pressed on my chest like someone had placed a boulder on it. I took out my phone and called the familiar garage 10 minutes from the house. "Hello? Can you send a mechanic to check my car at home?" "As soon as possible." Just 30 minutes later, a young mechanic in a grease-stained white and blue uniform arrived in a small tow truck. I led him into the garage. "Any specific problem?" he asked while crouching under the car. I stood behind him, hands in my pockets, trying to act calm. Not sure. Just do a full check for me. He lay flat on the floor, shining a flashlight underneath. After a while, I heard him mutter, here it is," followed by a long silence. "Everything okay down there?" I asked, my voice already starting to shake. He slid out, his face grim. "There's a problem with your brake system. The brake fluid line has a tiny tear, maybe just a 1/4 inch, but it's enough for the fluid to leak slowly. If you'd driven at high speed for a while, you'd lose the brakes completely." My heart dropped like a stone. "Did it tear on its own?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He shook his head, his voice lowering. "No way, it happened naturally. The cut is too clean, no natural cracking. Someone deliberately sliced it with a knife or saw just lightly so it would leak slowly instead of failing immediately. Very hard to notice unless you get right under and check." I stood there, the blood in my veins turning to ice. The mechanic said something about needing to tow the car to the shop for a thorough inspection, but I barely heard him anymore. Only one sentence echoed in my head, repeating like a broken cassette tape. "Who wants me dead?" And immediately an even more horrifying thought stabbed straight into my heart. How nervous was Valentina this morning when I stood in front of the car? Why did she rush off like she was running away? I wiped the sweat from my face and realized my hands were shaking violently. Last night's dream wasn't a nightmare. It was a final warning from my grandfather, the only person in this world who truly loved me. And I had just escaped death by a hair. And the person who wanted to kill me might be very close, too close. I called a taxi to the bank. The entire ride from home to downtown Phoenix, I sat completely silent. Eyes glued to the window, but seeing nothing except that tiny, perfectly straight cut under the car replaying over and over in my mind. The driver tried making small talk a few times. I just grunted in response. My head was somewhere else, in a place where someone was holding a saw and slicing my brake line, where someone was calmly calculating which curve on the I-10 I would die at. At the bank, I was a walking corpse. Colleagues greeted me. I nodded mechanically. I sat at my desk, the computer screen blazing bright, yet I couldn't read a single number. Every time the phone rang, my heart clenched. I was terrified it would be the garage confirming something even worse. I was equally terrified it would be Valentina, terrified of hearing her voice, terrified of having to pretend everything was normal. The whole day dragged on like a slow-motion nightmare. I only remember drinking 5 cups of black coffee, going to the bathroom 7 times even though I didn't need to, and staring at the clock nonstop, as if time could somehow rewind to last night so I never stepped into that garage. At 5 p.m., I called a taxi home. When the car turned into our quiet neighborhood, I asked the driver to stop about 50 meters from the house. I wanted to look first. Through the row of lush green trees, I saw Valentina standing in the kitchen, warm yellow light spilling over her like a painting. She was wearing the cream silk dress I loved most on her, but her face was twisted with tension. She held a glass of water but wasn't drinking. She just kept twisting it in her hands. Her eyes kept darting to the front door, then to the garage, then back to the front door, like she was counting down the seconds until someone came home. Or until someone never came home again. I paid the driver and walked the rest of the way. Each step felt like dragging lead weights. I opened the front door as quietly as possible, but the hinges still let out a small creak. Valentina jumped. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Water splashed across her feet and the cabinets. "Oh my God," she gasped, hand clutching her chest, face as pale as if she'd seen a ghost. I thought you weren't home yet." I looked at the broken glass on the floor, then at her. It took her exactly 2 seconds to force a smile, the professional smile she used with big clients, but I clearly saw the corners of her mouth trembling. "You're home early? I was just about to make something for you." She bent down to pick up the shards, deliberately turning her back so I couldn't see her face. I took off my jacket, hung it up, and tried to keep my voice steady. "The car's still at the shop for more checks. There's something I need to tell you." She froze for a second, then turned around, eyes wider than necessary. "What is it?" I told her. Word for word, about the perfectly clean cut on the brake line. About how, if I had taken the highway today, I'd probably be in the morgue right now. About how someone wanted me dead. Valentina threw herself at me, hugging me so tightly I nearly lost my balance. She held me so hard I could feel her heart pounding, unnaturally fast. Oh God, Tobias. Her voice broke, but I felt her fingers digging into my shoulders as if she were holding something back. Thank goodness you're okay, she kept repeating, words of comfort pouring out like a machine. But I noticed she didn't ask for details. She didn't ask what the cut looked like, which garage, whether we'd called the police. She just repeated, "Thank goodness you're okay," like a parrot stuck on a loop. I gently pulled her arms away and looked her straight in the eyes. "Are you hiding something from me?" She flinched, eyes blinking rapidly, the telltale sign she'd had since we were dating whenever she lied. "No, nothing. I'm just in shock. Don't overthink it." But throughout dinner, she barely ate. She just kept putting food on my plate, refilling my water, smiling at me, short, forced smiles that never reached her eyes. Whatever I asked, she answered, but disjointedly off topic. The air between us was so thick you could slice it. After dinner, she said she was tired and went upstairs first. I stayed downstairs a while, listening to the water running in the bathroom, then the hairdryer. Everything sounded perfectly normal, like any other night. When I finally went up, the bedroom door was ajar. I saw Valentina standing on the balcony, phone pressed to her ear, voice barely above a whisper. "It didn't work. He found out. No, it's not my fault. What do we do now?" I froze behind the door. She was speaking quickly, voice shaking with fear. Then suddenly she stopped, whipped around. Our eyes met through the crack in the door. Her face went white as a sheet, her hand trembled so badly the phone nearly slipped, and she frantically ended the call. When did you come up?" She forced a laugh, stepped back inside, and pulled the balcony door shut. "Just now," I answered, my voice dry as dust. I was just calling my mom, checking on her health." She said it without looking at me. I nodded, got into bed, and turned my back to her. I didn't ask anything else, because I knew if I did, she would lie again. And I wasn't ready to hear another lie tonight. I lay there, eyes wide open in the dark, listening to Valentina's breathing beside me, short, rapid, uneven. She wasn't sleeping either. I knew. She knew I knew. But we both stayed silent. That night I barely slept. The image of Valentina on the balcony whispering in panic kept looping in my head. The look on her face when the glass shattered. Her trembling hands when she hugged me. The smiles that never reached her eyes. Suspicion started as a tiny spark, but in just one night it had become a smoldering fire that refused to die. In the days that followed, I lived in a half-awake, half-dreaming state. Every morning, the first thing I did was inspect the car. Under the chassis, brake lines, tires, trunk, even the driver's seat, checking for anything out of place. I bought a tiny dash cam and installed it inside the car, recording 24/7. I began noticing every little detail about Valentina. How she'd glance at her phone and quickly lock the screen the moment I walked into the room. How she'd make up excuses to go to the supermarket and come home empty-handed. How she'd stand on the balcony late at night making phone calls. One night I clearly heard her whispering, "I can't do this anymore. He already suspects something. Please, just stop." But when I opened the door, she turned around with a weary smile and said she was just talking to a friend. I couldn't sleep. I was losing weight fast. I forced smiles at colleagues, forced smiles at my wife, forced smiles at my own reflection in the mirror every morning. I combed through my entire life looking for enemies. A client I once denied a loan, a jealous co-worker, one of Valentina's exes. Nothing. No one. My life had been so calm it was almost boring. I had no debts, no affairs, no addictions, no grudges. The only thing I had that anyone could possibly want was money. And there was only one person I trusted enough to tell everything to. Mason Trent. I called him one afternoon, voice hoarse. "I need to see you today. Right now." 2 hours later, I was sitting in Mason's law office in downtown Phoenix. The room was huge, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the burning red desert. But all I felt was cold. I told him everything. My grandfather's dream, the perfect cut on the brake line, Valentina's whispered phone calls. Mason listened without interrupting, just tapping his pen on the desk. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked a single question, his voice low and terrifying. "If you die, who benefits the most?" I froze. The $15 million inheritance my grandfather left me 2 years ago flashed crystal clear in my mind. The money was in a trust. I could withdraw only the interest to live on. The principal remained untouched. If I died without children, the entire amount would be split equally between my parents and my wife, Valentina. The blood drained from my face. Mason didn't say anything more. He just slid the box of tissues toward me, even though I wasn't crying. He knew what I was thinking. "Don't jump to conclusions," he said slowly, "but you need to check." The following weekend, I drove to my parents' house unannounced. My mother, Willow Lockwood, opened the door in a brand new silk dress, hair perfectly curled, grinning like I'd just won the lottery instead of a son she hadn't seen in 2 months. "Oh my God, Tobias. Why didn't you call? I would have made something special." She hugged me tightly. Expensive perfume flooded my nose. My father, Bennett Lockwood, came out of the living room holding a whiskey glass at 3 in the afternoon and slapped my back hard. "There's my boy. Come in, come in." They were overly warm, warmth that felt fake. Dinner was already laid out like an early Thanksgiving. Steak, French wine, tiramisu ordered from a fancy Italian place. They asked about work, my health, how gorgeous Valentina was looking lately. I answered vaguely, waiting. They didn't make me wait long. Before we'd even finished the main course, my father set down his knife and fork, cleared his throat, and said, "So, that money your grandfather left you, have you thought about investing it yet? I hear real estate is booming. I could introduce you to a few projects." My mother jumped in immediately, voice syrupy sweet. "Exactly, honey. 15 million isn't pocket change. You have to plan carefully. I think buying more rental properties would be smart, or at least park it in the bank for interest." I looked at them. Really looked. My father's eyes were gleaming. My mother's were shining. Not because their son was home, but because $15 million was within reach. I took a deep breath and said casually, "Actually, I've been thinking, maybe I'll donate it all to charity." The air in the dining room instantly turned to ice. My father froze with his wine glass halfway to his mouth. Red liquid sloshed over the rim. My mother's knife slipped from her fingers and clattered loudly against the porcelain plate. "What did you just say?" my father asked, voice rising an octave. "I said I'm considering giving it all to an orphanage or a cancer foundation. Grandpa always wanted to do that but never got around to it. I think I should do it for him." My mother's face turned crimson. She slammed her silverware down with a loud clang. "Are you insane, Tobias? That's family money. Your grandfather left it to his grandchildren, not to strangers." My father roared. "Did that wife of yours put you up to this? Or did someone brainwash you with that stupid hippie nonsense? $15 million, not 15,000. If you dare give it away to outsiders, I'll disown you." I sat silently and watched them perform. My father's face red with rage, my mother's eyes blazing as if I'd just announced I was going to burn the cash. Not a single word of concern like, "Have you thought this through, or are you sure?" Just pure fury. Fury that the money was slipping out of their grasp. I pretended to sigh and raised my hands in surrender. Okay, I was just kidding. I'm still considering a lot of options." Instantly, like magic, the tension vanished. My father laughed heartily and refilled my glass. "That's my boy. Joking like that nearly gave your old man a heart attack." My mother clutched her chest and gave a strained laugh. "You scared me half to death. If you actually did that, I wouldn't sleep for a month." They exhaled in relief. Obvious relief. Relief they didn't even try to hide. I finished the last bite of steak and tasted nothing. Only one question remained in my head. If I really died, just how relieved would they be? On the drive home, I checked under the car 3 times before starting the engine. I called Mason. "I think you were right," I said, voice raw. "My family, they want me dead." Mason was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What do you want to do next?" I stared at the pitch-black highway ahead, fingers gripping the steering wheel so hard they hurt. "I want to be sure." And for the first time in days, I no longer felt like prey. I had become the hunter. I didn't go home that night. I drove around Phoenix until nearly 2 in the morning, streetlights streaking across the windshield like cold white streaks. Only one thought remained in my head. If they wanted me dead for $15 million, I would make them pay for every single cent. The next morning, I went looking for Sophie Lane. I'd heard her name from Mason, a former Special Forces private investigator, now working solo, specializing in cases wealthy families didn't want the police touching. We met in a rundown coffee shop on the outskirts where nobody bothered to look at anyone else. Sophie was about 40, short-cropped hair, ice-gray eyes, wearing an old leather jacket. She listened without blinking, jotting only a few notes in a small notebook. 3 targets: Bennett Lockwood, Willow Lockwood, and my wife, Valentina Lockwood. I want to know who they meet, what they say, where they go, what they do. Everything. No limits. Sophie looked up. "This won't be cheap." I slid a thick envelope across the table. "Cash. Half now, half when you deliver. And I want it fast." She took the envelope, slipped it into an inside pocket without counting. "Give me 2 weeks." Those 14 days were hell. I still came home every night, still kissed Valentina on the cheek, still asked how her day was. She still smiled, still cooked, still wrapped her arms around me from behind while I washed dishes. But every touch from her now made my skin crawl. I counted the seconds until night fell, until she was asleep, so I could sit in the pitch-black home office, staring at the security cameras I'd installed myself, waiting for Sophie's messages. On the 15th day, Sophie called. "I have what you need. Come to the address I'm sending now." I went to her apartment in Scottsdale. On the table sat a file at least 300 pages thick, plus 2 USB drives. Sophie poured whiskey for both of us. No ice. The first revelation hit me like a punch to the chest. My parents were $4.7 million in debt. Las Vegas casinos, football betting, loan sharks, the house double mortgaged. The bank had sent the final foreclosure notice. 30 days until they lost everything. I remembered the $3 million my grandfather had given them 4 years ago to stabilize their lives. Now they were truly stable. Stably at rock bottom. I turned the page. My hands started shaking. A series of photos. Valentina and a tall blonde man in a gray suit embracing in her office parking lot. Them walking hand in hand into a lunchtime motel. Them kissing in an elevator. Her smiling radiantly in bed, hair splayed across the pillow, eyes I once believed were only for me. His name, Seth Dalton, creative director, her co-worker. But that wasn't all. Sophie plugged in a USB. An audio file began playing, voices crystal clear in the small room. My mother's voice, sharp as ice. "What the hell did you do letting him discover the car problem? How long do we delay the plan now?" My father's, hoarse from liquor and rage. "I told you to cut it lightly so he'd die on the highway and it would look like an accident. Now he's alive and well and suspicious as hell." Then Valentina, trembling, choking back tears. I'm sorry. I didn't expect him to check the car. I can't do this anymore, and I can't kill him." Silence for several seconds. Then my mother's sneer. "Can't do it. How about this?" The sound of photos being slapped onto the table. I could picture it, my mother pushing the stack of affair photos toward Valentina. Valentina broke into sobs. "No, please. I beg you, don't send them to him." My father roared. Then keep going. Next time, make it certain. I've already prepared the drugs. Just slip them into his wine, he'll pass out cold. You drive the car into the garage, lock the door, leave the engine running. Carbon monoxide. Perfect accident. 15 million split 3 ways. Valentina cried harder. Please, I'm terrified. He's my husband. My mother cut in, voice sweet like poisoned honey. Husband? A husband who makes you work overtime and live in this tiny house? 15 million is enough for you to live like a queen. Europe, designer bags, your young lover. Choose. Do it, or tomorrow the whole city knows you're a whore sleeping with your boss. Dead silence. Then soft, broken sobs. Then Valentina's voice, small and pathetic. I'll do it. But please don't let him find out about this. The recording ended. The room fell into dead silence. I sat there, my whole body ice cold as if I'd fallen into a frozen pit. Sophie said nothing, just watched quietly, letting me face the raw agony tearing my chest apart. My wife had cheated on me and was being blackmailed with those very photos. And my parents, the people who gave me life and raised me, were ready to murder their own son for money. When I closed the file, my hands were no longer shaking. I realized the most painful truth of all. The woman I loved most had betrayed me, but the people I trusted absolutely, my own flesh and blood, were the cruelest monsters in my life. For the first time, I truly understood how close I had come to death, and that my own family had pushed me to the edge of that cliff. I left Sophie's apartment at midnight and drove home numb. Valentina was asleep, turned away from me, breathing evenly. I lay down beside her, stared at the dark ceiling, and whispered into the darkness, "You want me dead for money? Fine. But I will make you pay every single dollar." The next morning, I gathered every piece of evidence Sophie had given me, photos, audio recordings, financial reports, put them all into a black leather briefcase, and drove straight to Mason's office. I dropped the briefcase on his desk with a sharp, dry thud, as if I were setting down a ticking bomb. Mason sat there in silence, slowly turning each page, studying every affair photo, reading every line of debt reports, and listening to every dark recorded conversation. When he finally took off his glasses, rubbed his temples, and let out a long, heavy sigh, I knew the answer wouldn't be pleasant. "This is enough for me to believe you'll be dead a second time very soon," Mason said bluntly, his voice low and dead serious. "But it's not enough for the police to open a formal attempted murder investigation. There's no direct physical evidence tying anyone to a crime, no clear confession in front of an independent witness, no specific weapon. They'll just treat this as an internal family dispute and probably suggest marriage counseling or divorce." I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles went white, my voice hoarse with rage and helplessness. "So what the hell am I supposed to do? Just sit here and wait for them to try again?" Mason looked me straight in the eye, his gaze ice cold and razor sharp. "No. You have to be 10 times smarter than they are. Do not go to the police yet. If you move now without ironclad proof, they'll deny everything. Hire the best lawyers money can buy, and next time they'll be more careful. Maybe a gun, maybe a real accident with 0 traces. Then you'll die and no one will ever know why." I swallowed hard. A chill ran down my spine. "So what do I do right now?" Mason smiled, a cold, cutting smile belonging to a lawyer who had won too many impossible cases. He leaned forward and spoke slowly like he was reading a death sentence to the guilty. "You play the perfect actor. You keep being the calm, gentle husband who trusts his wife completely. The warm, respectful son who suspects nothing. You smile at your wife, hug her, call your parents regularly, act like you still believe you're living in a normal, loving family. Only when they're convinced you're soft and completely blind will they get sloppy again. The rest we'll handle," Mason continued. "We'll gather the real gold standard evidence they'll create themselves when they think everything is under control." He laid out the plan step by step, crystal clear. Install ultra-small cameras with audio everywhere in the house. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, and especially the garage. Plant automatic voice recorders under the dining table, under the sofa, even in my car. Auto backup every call and text from Valentina's phone. Sophie keeps 24/7 surveillance ready to capture every secret meeting. They will definitely try again, Mason said with absolute certainty. And when they do, we'll catch them red-handed, with evidence they can't deny. I nodded. At that moment, I knew I had no choice but to trust Mason and follow the plan. I began acting, flawlessly. Every morning I hugged Valentina from behind, kissed her hair, asked about her day. I sent loving texts during work hours, called my parents every couple of days, asked how they were, told them I missed them. I smiled more, spoke less about anything suspicious, and observed everything in secret. I noticed Valentina looking at me strangely, relieved that I seemed unsuspicious, yet uneasy about why I was so calm. My parents started calling more often, their voices syrupy sweet, always asking, "How are you lately, son? Anything unusual?" Probing. I waited in constant tension, counting the days like a countdown to my own doomsday, but outwardly I remained perfectly composed. Then one Thursday afternoon, as I was leaving work and about to head home, Sophie called with an emergency. "They're meeting," she said quickly, "this time at a small motel in Mesa. The meeting is rushed and calculated. I'm sending the new recording to your secure email now." I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, opened the file, and listened word for word. My father's voice came first, irritated and urgent. "This time there can be no more failure. The sleeping pills I got are industrial strength, just 2 pills and he'll be out cold for at least 8 hours. You slip them into his wine, make him finish the glass. Then drive the car into the garage, lock the doors, leave the engine running. Done. Drunk driving, carbon monoxide accident. Perfect. No one will suspect a thing." My mother cut in, voice emotionless and icy. "Wear gloves, wipe fingerprints off the bottle and everything else, and stop crying, Valentina. Do you want the money or do you want to go to prison for adultery?" Valentina was silent for a long time. Then her voice came, not trembling with fear anymore, but terrifyingly calm. "Fine, I'll do it. But after it's done, the money gets split evenly like you promised, right?" My parents laughed with satisfaction, their laughter echoing through the recording. I turned it off. My hands shook so badly the phone fell to the floor. They were ready to kill me a second time, and this time they were far more confident. I kept playing the naive husband. When I got home, I even suggested, "How about we go out, just the 2 of us this weekend?" Valentina agreed immediately, a strange glint in her eyes. But then everything suddenly veered into an even darker, more unpredictable direction. One Friday afternoon, I came home early and sat in the dark home office checking the hidden kitchen mic recordings. There was a call Valentina made when she thought I wasn't home yet. Her voice was low, but every word crystal clear. "Seth, listen to me. My in-laws are forcing me to take care of Tobias this weekend. I'm going to do it. I have no choice left. But listen carefully. After I get my share of the inheritance, $5 million, I'm going to get rid of my in-laws too. Maybe stage some kind of accident. I haven't figured it out yet, but I will. Then we take all 15 million, disappear to Costa Rica or anywhere else, and live the rest of our lives where no one can find us. You're in, right?" On the other end, Seth chuckled softly, voice dripping with excitement. "Baby, I've been in forever. Just finish off that idiot husband of yours." Valentina laughed too, the laugh I once loved most in the world, now cold and venomous enough to make my blood freeze. "Very soon. This weekend. I promise." I sat frozen in the darkness, breath caught in my throat. I had thought Valentina was just a poor victim coerced by my parents. I had pitied her, even wanted to find a way to save her from their grip. But now I understood the horrifying truth. She wasn't a victim. She was a full accomplice, and greedier than all of them. She didn't just want me dead. She planned to kill my parents too and take everything for herself. The third betrayal hit so deep I felt nothing anymore. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, numb void in my chest. From the moment I heard that recording, I realized I wasn't facing a simple murder plot anymore. It had become a labyrinth of betrayal where everyone wore a different mask and had their own secret plan. My parents wanted the money. My wife wanted to save herself, get revenge, and take it all. The deeper I looked, the clearer it became. I had been placed at the exact center of an elaborate trap where every step could be my last. In that moment, a freezing truth gripped me. If I didn't act first, if I didn't flip the entire board, I might never live to see another day. No one was coming to save me. No miracle was going to appear. There was only me, with my mind, my pain, and whatever clarity I had left. I had to get ahead of them. I had to take the initiative instead of waiting to be finished off. That was the only way to stay alive. That night, after my wife had fallen into a deep sleep, I slipped out of the bedroom and called Mason. "I need to see you. Right now." 30 minutes later, I was sitting in his office. The desk lamp cast harsh light on both our exhausted faces. I told him everything without leaving out a single detail. The recording of Valentina talking to Seth, her plan to kill me and then eliminate my parents, the cold smile when she thought about keeping all 15 million for herself. Mason listened in silence. The pause that followed felt like an entire century. Then he let out a heavy breath. "All this for $15 million, he said, voice hoarse. "Enough money to destroy any family that still has greed in its veins." I dropped my head onto the desk, hands clutching my skull. Should I just disappear? Sell everything, change my name, leave Phoenix, leave the country for good? That way they'd have no reason to come after me anymore. Mason looked at me, eyes sharp as blades. "Listen to me, Tobias. People who have tried to kill you once will happily try a second, third, fourth time until they succeed. They know you're alive and still holding the money. No matter where you run, they'll find you. Private investigators, bank records, maybe even hired killers. You'd spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. That's not living. That's surviving." My eyes burned. "Then what the hell do I do?" Mason stood, walked around the desk, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You face them. You expose everything. You drag the truth into the light. That's the only way you'll ever be truly free. Running just prolongs the fear. Confronting it ends it." I was silent for a very long time. Then I nodded. From that moment, we built the counterattack. I kept playing the perfect clueless husband, kissing Valentina every morning, sending flowers during her lunch break, asking if she was tired. Meanwhile, Mason quietly contacted a high-ranking police detective he knew from his defense lawyer days. Someone trustworthy enough to stay silent until the final second. Cameras, microphones, data backups. Everything was ready. We were just waiting for them to make their move. And that day came faster than I expected. Friday afternoon, a text from Valentina lit up my phone. "Darling, dinner just the two of us tonight? I booked La Belle Vie, 7 p.m. Only us. I love you." I read it over and over. My heart beat slow but hard. This was the signal. The second murder attempt had officially begun. I replied instantly, "I'll pick you up right after work." I wore the navy suit she loved most, tied the tie perfectly straight, sprayed the old cologne she used to bury her nose in my neck and call intoxicating. When I came downstairs, Valentina was standing there in a tight red dress, hair in an elegant updo, lips blood red, stunning enough that for a split second I almost forgot she was about to kill me. "You look so handsome," she smiled, slipping her arms around my neck. "I'm so lucky to be married to you." I smiled back and kissed her forehead. "I'm the lucky one." La Belle Vie sat in the heart of Scottsdale. Flickering candlelight, soft violin, hushed voices of the elite. We were seated at a private corner table, snow-white tablecloth, fresh red roses in the center. Valentina played the perfect wife flawlessly. She reached for my hand, stroked my fingers, gave me gentle smiles every time I talked about work. If I didn't know better, even I would have believed this was a romantic date. She kept refilling my glass with red wine. "Drink, honey, it's delicious." I lifted the glass, took a tiny sip, smiled. "You too?" She drank but only touched it to her lips. I knew why. When the main course arrived, I stood. "Be right back, bathroom." I walked slowly on purpose, giving her time. When I returned, I caught it, a flash of tension in her eyes for a fraction of a second, instantly replaced by that sweet smile. My glass had been topped up again. She raised hers. "To us?" I smiled, clinked her glass. "To us." I took the smallest sip, held it in my mouth. While she looked down to cut her steak, I brought the napkin to my lips, pretending to dab, and spat the wine into it. I repeated the motion all night: sip, hold, spit. The glass emptied slowly while I stayed perfectly sober. Valentina grew increasingly restless. She poured more, urged me to drink faster, laughed louder, but I could see the faint beads of sweat on her forehead despite the air conditioning. By dessert, I started the performance. I slurred my words, blinked slowly, let my hand waver as if I couldn't hold it steady. I feel a little dizzy, babe." She gripped my hand, voice dripping with perfectly fake concern. "You're drunk already? Let me take you home." I nodded weakly, then slowly slumped forward onto the table, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. In my jacket pocket, the tiny recorder was still running. Valentina waited a few seconds, then pulled out her phone and whispered urgently, "Mom, it worked. I got him to drink it all. I'm bringing him home now." I clearly heard my mother's triumphant laugh on the other end. Valentina paid quickly, then half-dragged me to the car. I let my whole body go limp, so she had to struggle. The familiar scent of her perfume now made me want to throw up. She opened the back door, shoved me across the seat, then slid behind the wheel. On the drive home, I kept my eyes shut, but my ears wide open. Her heart was pounding. She muttered to herself, "Just a little longer. Almost over." I lay there motionless, thinking about our wedding day, thinking about the vows, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. The same woman who had spoken those words was now driving me home to murder me. In the darkness of the speeding car, I played dead while my mind was ice cold and alert. Every frantic breath from the driver's seat reminded me I was exactly on the edge of the trap they had set. But this time, I was no longer prey. In that moment, I felt it clearly. The biggest battle of my life was coming, and I was ready to step into it. The car turned onto our familiar street, tires crunching on gravel. The automatic garage door slid open, motion sensor lights flooding the space with harsh white glare. Valentina turned off the engine but didn't open the garage door. She stepped out, walked around to the back seat, and shook my shoulder. Honey, wake up, we're home." I stayed silent, breathing slow and even, head lolling like a man deep in drunken sleep. She let out a small sigh of relief and whispered, "Completely wasted." I clearly heard the snap of rubber gloves, the hiss of air freshener spray, the soft rustle of paper towels wiping the door handles, the steering wheel. She was meticulous, every detail like a professional killer. When she was done, Valentina slid back into the driver's seat, closed the car door, and locked it. Then she started the engine again. The low growl filled the sealed space. Exhaust began pouring in. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. The air grew thick and heavy. That was the moment the police moved in. Blinding headlights flooded the garage from outside. Sirens screamed. The garage door was kicked in with a deafening crash. Valentina let out a blood-curdling scream when she saw me slowly sit up in the back seat, eyes wide open, completely awake. Her face turned the color of a corpse, lips trembling, unable to form words. What's happening? This can't be." I opened the door and stepped out slowly. Police flashlights pinned her in place. Mason stood there holding the arrest warrant, 6 armed officers behind him. I looked straight into Valentina's eyes, my voice so cold it sounded foreign even to me. "You put on a hell of a performance." I almost believed it. She collapsed to her knees on the garage floor, sobbing, clutching at my legs. "Please, forgive me. Your parents forced me. I didn't want to. I had no choice." I crouched down to her eye level, pulled out my phone, and played the recording of her call with Seth. Her own voice echoed through the garage. "I'll get rid of your parents too. Then we take all 15 million and disappear to Costa Rica, right?" Valentina jerked her head up, eyes bulging. Every excuse died in her throat. Her face shattered like dropped glass. Officers moved in and cuffed her. She didn't resist, just hung her head, tears dripping onto the concrete. I stood watching, my heart squeezed so tight it hurt, not with rage but with a numb, dead disappointment that left no feeling at all. One of the officers turned to me. "Mr. Lockwood, would you like to come with us to your parents' house?" I nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I need to see their faces one last time." On the way to my parents' house, I sat in the back of the police cruiser, silent. Mason sat beside me, hand on my shoulder, but I felt nothing. Only one question looped in my mind. How would they react when they saw I was still alive? The car stopped in front of the house I grew up in, once full of laughter, now just an empty shell of lies. The living room lights were still on. Through the window I could see my parents sitting on the sofa watching TV. An officer knocked. My mother opened the door in her floral robe, hair in curlers, grinning wide. "Tobias, you're home? Why didn't you call so I could—" She froze when she saw the line of police behind me. My father stepped out of the living room holding a beer. "What the hell is this?" When he saw me walk in, alive and alert, he stammered, How? Why are you here?" Mason stepped forward and placed a thick folder and 2 USB drives on the coffee table. "Bennett Lockwood, Willow Lockwood, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and accessory to property sabotage and furtherance of a felony." My mother let out a shrill fake laugh. "You've got the wrong people. This is a misunderstanding. Tobias made it all up." My father pointed at me, roaring, "You ungrateful little bastard. You dare frame your own parents. Has money blinded you? I raised you just so you could drag the cops here to cuff me." My mother wailed, tears and snot running down her face. "My baby. I gave birth to you, fed you every bite. How can you do this to your mother? It's that wife of yours putting ideas in your head, isn't it?" I stood there and let them perform. Let them spit out their final lines. Then I asked one single question, voice tired and hollow. "When you sat there planning how to drug my wine, how to slice my brake line, how to let me suffocate in the garage, did you ever once remember I was your son?" The room went dead silent. No answer. Only the cheerful jingle of a TV commercial playing in the background. That silence was the clearest answer of all. The officers moved in. My father stopped shouting, just stared at the floor. My mother sobbed but wouldn't meet my eyes. They were cuffed and led away. As he passed me, my father muttered, voice hoarse, I only wanted what was best for the family." I didn't reply. I just watched their backs disappear through the door, the same door I used to run through after school, the same door where they hugged me when I got into college, where I stood crying the day Grandpa died. Now it was over. I stood alone in the empty living room looking at the family photo on the wall, everyone smiling on a beach 10 years ago. I walked over, took it down, looked at it one last time, then turned it face down on the table. My family from this moment on was officially ashes. I stepped outside. A rare phoenix rain was falling, cold drops hitting my face. I tilted my head back and let the rain wash everything away. And for the first time in months, I took a deep breath, the breath of a free man. But this freedom was not the light, soaring kind you see in movies. It was heavy, bitter, as if I had just escaped a sealed room full of toxic smoke and could still smell the acrid stench clinging to my hair and skin. The case exploded overnight. By the next morning, the news was everywhere. Local channels opened their broadcasts with blazing red headlines. Phoenix millionaire family's $15 million inheritance murder plot. The press called it the darkest family crime in Arizona this decade. Fake marriage, inheritance greed, adultery, attempted murder, every sensational detail crammed into screaming headlines. My phone rang nonstop. Reporters, old acquaintances, even strangers texting, "Are you Tobias Lockwood?" I turned it off, drew the curtains, and sat in the dark listening to the rain tapping against the windows. Seth Dalton was arrested 2 days later. Police stormed his office in the middle of the workday in front of all his colleagues. Photos of him cuffed, head bowed, being marched out of the building went viral within hours. During interrogation, he spilled everything. That Valentina had told him the entire plan, that he agreed out of love, money, and the fantasy of running away with her once they had the fortune. Based on his confession and the evidence, he was charged as a co-conspirator in attempted murder. The trial began 3 months later and dragged on for nearly 6 weeks. The Maricopa County courtroom was packed every single day. Reporters crowded the hallways. Cameras flashed nonstop whenever I walked in. People lined up from dawn for public seats as if this were a live true crime drama. Each day peeled another layer of skin off my past. They tore into one another without mercy. My father sat in the witness box, gaunt from sudden alcohol withdrawal in jail, growling that Valentina was the venomous snake who seduced 2 old people, that she was the mastermind, that he only wanted what was best for his son. When it was my mother's turn, she sobbed that Valentina had exploited their financial crisis to force her cooperation, that she only wanted to save the house and protect the family. But everyone could see it was just a victim act she built to hide her own greed. Valentina was different. She sat there, skeletal in her orange jumpsuit, hair cropped short, no makeup left. She cried, and this time the tears were real. She said my parents had blackmailed her with the affair photos, forced her hand, that she was terrified of losing everything. She looked at me across the gallery, mouthing, "I'm sorry." But I just looked back. No nod, no shake of the head. Seth kept it simple. I just did what Valentina told me. She said there'd be money, that she'd leave her husband, that we'd be together. I was stupid enough to believe her. They ripped one another apart in front of the judge, the jury, and me. And the more they tore, the clearer each person's true nature became. Greed, deceit, bottomless cruelty. Mason's evidence was ironclad. Video of Valentina slipping the drugs into the wine. Audio from the cafe meetings. Lab results on the drugged wine samples. Surveillance photos. Text messages. The call with Seth. Not a single gap. Sentencing day, the courtroom fell dead silent. The judge, an older woman with a voice sharp as a blade, read slowly, "Bennett Lockwood, 30 years without parole for first-degree murder conspiracy and attempted murder. Willow Lockwood, 18 years for co-conspiracy, coercion, and aiding attempted murder. Valentina Lockwood, 22 years for directly administering the sedative, attempted murder, staging a false scene, and obstruction of justice. Seth Dalton, 12 years for accessory to attempted murder." Cries, curses, and scraping chairs erupted in chaos. Valentina turned toward me, mouth open as if to speak, but I had already turned my back and walked out. I didn't want to hear another word. In the months that followed, I learned to live again from zero. I cleaned the house like a man possessed. I threw out everything that had ever belonged to Valentina. Clothes, perfume, wedding photos, even the bed we slept in. I repainted the walls, bought new curtains, filled the rooms with plants. Every weekend I ran 10 kilometers along the Arizona Canal, sweat pouring out as if washing away every toxic memory. I went back to the bank and buried myself in work until my boss told me to take leave before I collapsed. I learned to cook, to meditate, to sleep without pills. I survived, but only survived. Then one day the letters came. 2 letters at once from different prisons. My parents wrote jointly, "Son, we're old now. We regret everything." Valentina wrote alone, "Tobias, I know you hate me. I just asked to see you once." I sat at the kitchen table holding both letters for hours. I didn't want to go, but I knew if I didn't, the ghosts would follow me forever. I needed to close this door with my own hands. I signed up for 3 separate visits, 3 days in a row. First, my parents. They were led into the visiting room, separated by thick glass. My father was skeletal, hair snow white, back hunched. My mother had no makeup, dark circles under her eyes, skin wrinkled as if she had aged 10 years and 6 months. They picked up the phones, looked at me, eyes red. My father spoke first, voice rasping. "Son, are you okay?" I didn't answer his question. I asked only one of my own. "Why did you do it to me?" My mother burst into tears. I don't know anymore. We were drowning in debt. The bank was taking the house. I was terrified of losing everything. Then Valentina said if you were gone, everything would be okay. My father bowed his head. I got greedy, son. Too greedy. And I went blind. I thought I was saving the family. I looked at them for a long time. At the man who once taught me to fish at Roosevelt Lake, now in prison for trying to kill me. At the woman who once sang me to sleep, now crying over the plan to suffocate me in my own garage. They begged for forgiveness over and over, voices shaking. I said nothing. I simply set the phone down, stood, and walked out. My silence was the final answer. The next day, Valentina. She walked in wearing the oversized prison uniform, short hair exposing a hollow face. The moment she sat down, she broke, tears splashing onto the counter. "Tobias, I'm sorry. I haven't slept a single night. I was monstrous." I picked up the phone, voice calm. "You were going to kill my parents too once you were done with me, weren't you?" She froze, tears stopping mid-fall. Then she nodded, barely visible. "I was scared. I wanted the money. I wanted Seth. I thought I deserved more." I nodded slowly. "You're out of chances, Valentina. It ends here. Don't write, don't call, don't do anything. I'm going to live, and my new life has no room for you." I stood. She pounded on the glass, screaming my name, but I didn't turn around. When the visiting room door closed behind me, something heavy that had been crushing my chest for months finally dropped away. I walked lighter with every step, as if I had just set down a backpack full of stones I'd carried for far too long. Outside, the rain had stopped. The Phoenix sky was a brilliant blue, the sun blazing gold. I took a deep breath, this time for real. The breath of a man who was truly finally free. But freedom doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy. In the first few weeks, I still jolted awake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced I could hear Valentina whispering on the balcony or my father growling in the kitchen. I still looked at my new car and automatically checked underneath it, even though I knew no one was stalking me anymore. The house in Phoenix, once my home, had become nothing more than a cage full of toxic memories. Every wall, every piece of furniture reminded me of fake smiles, cold embraces, nights spent lying next to someone who wanted me dead. I decided to sell it. 1 week after the trial, I called a real estate agent. "Sell it as fast as possible. Any price." The house sold like hotcakes. Who wouldn't want a beautiful villa in an upscale neighborhood with a dark true crime story to spice up the listing? I didn't care about profit. I just wanted a clean break. I chose Seattle, a rainy city, green and lush, far enough away that no one would recognize me on the street. I bought a small house on the shore of Lake Washington, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over rippling water and swimming ducks. The first time I stepped inside, I stood in the empty living room and cried, not from sadness, but because for the first time I finally had a place that belonged only to me. Most of the inheritance went into safe long-term investments. With the rest, I founded the Lockwood Foundation, a charity in my grandfather's name. On our last fishing trip, he had told me, "Money only means something when it helps others, Tobias. One day, do this for me." I did exactly that, supporting the homeless, building shelters, providing scholarships for orphans. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because every time I saw a child receive a new backpack or an older man get a dry place to sleep, another piece of the wound inside me healed. Volunteering became the only medicine that truly worked. I drove trucks loaded with food to the slums on weekends, handed out warm blankets when Seattle turned cold, and listened to stories I once thought only existed in movies: job loss, addiction, being abandoned by family. Each story reminded me that good people still existed, that genuine kindness still existed, things I had lost inside my own blood family. A few months after moving to Seattle, the foundation held a fundraiser at Volunteer Park. It was drizzling, but people came in droves, setting up tents, grilling, singing. I was soaked from running around the registration booth when a woman walked up, smiling brightly despite the rain in her hair. "Hi, I'd like to sign up as a long-term volunteer. Do you have any spots left?" I looked up. She was about 30, brown hair in a ponytail, sparkling green eyes, wearing a bright yellow raincoat. Pinned to her chest, Emily Rhodes, elementary school teacher. "Of course," I smiled, handing her the form. "A teacher doing charity work too?" She shrugged, grinning. "The kids teach me a lot. They need to see the world is bigger than their classroom." We talked for a few more minutes. She didn't ask where I was from, whether I'd been married, whether I had kids. She only asked about the foundation, about the children we helped, and laughed when I told her about a little boy who hugged me because he got a new bicycle. After that day, Emily became a regular volunteer. She taught orphaned kids to read, organized games, and always showed up with a smile that held no pretense. We started talking more, first about work, then movies, books, the best coffee shops in Seattle. She knew nothing about my past. No news stories, no drama, no pitying looks. Just simple, honest warmth I had long forgotten existed. One stormy evening, after delivering food to a homeless shelter, my car broke down in the middle of the road. Emily was with me, soaked to the bone, but still laughing. "Well, now what?" I called for a tow truck. We sat in the car waiting, our breath fogging the windows. And we talked, really talked, for the first time. I told her everything, no holding back. From my grandfather's dream, the tiny cut under the car, the whispered phone calls on the balcony, the night in the garage, the trial, the prison letters. I told it all without crying, just trembling a little at the end. Emily listened without interrupting, without empty, comforting words. When I finished, she simply took my hand, firm and warm. "Thank you for telling me," she said, "and thank you for choosing to stay in this world, for choosing to keep doing good." We didn't rush. We didn't jump into a relationship. We just saw each other more, walked along the lake, drank coffee, cooked together on weekends. Emily never tried to fix me. She was simply there, calm and real. And slowly I realized I was smiling more, sleeping better, no longer waking up in panic. One autumn afternoon, I sat in the small office of the foundation, finishing the first-year financial report. Outside the window, golden leaves drifted down onto the lake. I looked back at the entire journey. From the night I woke from my grandfather's dream, from that tiny cut under the car, from the whispered calls on the balcony to the garage filled with poison, the cold courtroom, the final prison visits. I had lost so much, my blood family, the wife I once loved, my faith in love, a chunk of my youth stolen by fear. But I had also found things far more precious. Peace without constant vigilance, kindness without motive, and a future without shadows. I learned a few truths carved into my bones. The truth can be brutal enough to tear your heart apart, but it is the only thing that frees us from toxic relationships. Family is not just blood. Family is where you feel safe, truly loved, and free to be yourself without fear of betrayal. Greed can twist even the most beautiful things, turning love into a weapon. A person's actions, not their words, reveal who they really are. If someone has proven even once that they are capable of hurting you, walk away. Don't cling. Don't forgive only to be hurt again. Sometimes leaving is the only way to stay alive. And finally, trust your gut. A tiny hunch, a strange dream, a nameless unease can be enough to save you from an entire tragedy. I turned off the office light, locked the door, and stepped outside. Emily was waiting in the parking lot, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee, smiling when she saw me. "Let's go home. I made lasagna." I smiled, put my arm around her shoulders. We walked beneath the blazing red maple trees, leaves falling gently like the very last pieces of my old memories finally letting go. I once thought I would never love again. But life, it turns out, still keeps a little light for those who dare to keep walking, and I kept walking. 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 Walking.